Hi, Bob Hooey here from Alberta Speakers, and I have a special guest with me today, my friend Faith Wood. We've been friends for a long time, but let me tell you a little bit about my friend Faith. She's a communication and conflict consultant, language and persuasion maven, award-winning novelist, expert storyteller. That only begins to tell you the story of my friend Faith. But going a little deeper, you'll find that she's a former peace officer who mastered the power of persuasion, firsthand in the field, a teacher of practical communication and influence strategies for captivated audience in government, associations, and organizations in over 7 countries so far. She holds the acclaimed CSP, or Certified Speaking Profession designation, which says everything about her dedication to the art and craft of her audience capture, but says little about how entertaining she actually is as she practices her art and her craft. The vitally important underlying thread of building community around you is woven throughout her engaging keynotes and workshop trainings. Welcome, Faith.
Thanks, Bob.
Glad to have you with us. Glad to be able to share who you are and a little bit of your brilliance with the people that get a chance to see this video.
Well, I hope that you actually find the brilliance.
I know you well enough to know there's brilliance there. I would be surprised if there isn't. And I've seen
no one's as magnetic as you.
I've seen that brilliance in various countries. So there you go. I've been at least 1 or 2 of those countries where you've spoken. But let me ask you a quick question. I'm sure people would want to know. Tell us why you got started in a speaking career. It's not the normal career that people choose. So how did you get started?
Well, I mean, I probably could go all the way back to being a child when my parents paid me to be quiet in class. It didn't work then, it's not working now. But, it isn't something I think that people decide to be a speaker. I think that they find themselves in environments where they become a speaker. And that if they have a gift for the gab, which I practiced in childhood, if they have a gift for it in clarity and being able to share a message in very measurable ways, but also have the charisma and even the joy of it, instead of feeling oh my God, I have to get up and talk in front of a bunch of people. If you feel really passionate about your messages, it's a pretty easy place to be. And for me, I started my career, as you mentioned, as a peace officer and in healthcare before that. And there was plenty of opportunities where I had to be able to speak on my feet, and typically one-to-one. I'm dealing with calls and situations and high crisis events. And then I got injured on the job, and I needed to take a step back from the field a little bit. And I was sitting in the office causing all kinds of problems because apparently I'm just a little bit too sarcastic for my own good. And I had a staff sergeant encourage me to take training as opposed to sit in the office and answer phones. It was probably better for him or the people that I was answering calls for than it was. But I asked at that time, do I have to take training that relates to the work that I do? And I was told, no, I don't, and not necessarily. So I started studying conflict resolution, mediation, and negotiation. I took my hypnosis designation. I studied neurolinguistic psychology. I started forensic psychology and coaching skills for leaders and police departments. And then it occurred to me while I was doing all the training that if some of the content, if I had known them in the early days, it would have made my life easier. And I probably would have handled contentious situations better if I'd have had some of those tools and tactics and strategies. And so I created a course really quickly. I called it Influencing with Integrity. It was a 5-day course to replace the human relations course in the peace officer training program. And I really just wanted to teach new officers how not to get a complaint about their attitude. And just to help them get through high call volumes with greater ease and flow. And that really took off because the tactics worked. The strategies made sense, the conflict resolution with the stories that I was telling to support them, because I'd had the experience when it didn't go well. And so it makes the stories more funny. And I was able to kind of digest this content that I was taking in so many different places and distill it down into real tactical, practical application. At the same time, I became the president of the association. And so I was having to speak at government high-end government meetings and start lobbying, if you will, for lack of a better word, for working conditions and equipment. And so I ended up with this very diverse way of delivering content on the fly and in really prescribed learning academy style of training. And it took off, and people started to say, I want to take my training from her. I don't want to go to the Justice College. That last instructor was boring, and she's anything but boring. and so I kept adding to the arsenal of stories and kept doing things that I thought really added value and meaning. People that they're really struggling in their careers, and really help them wade through the conflicts that I think plague a lot of individuals in organizations. A lot of sense of feeling bullied or invisible or overlooked, and teaching them how to communicate and present themselves in a way that they could not be treated inappropriately or unprofessionally, but also that when they spoke, they sounded professional and on point, and stopped some of the rambling. And that, I think, really kickstarted my career in speaking, because then those individuals would say, hey, my wife's company needs you, or my kids have this employer, or my cousin or my brother. And so over time, a very short period of time, I suddenly had this company and I had to make a choice between continuing to do police work or let that go and pursue this crazy world of professional speaking. And you and I both know that it can be, living the dream some days and 4 canceled flights in a snowstorm. So.
Oh yeah, we're sleeping in an airport.
Yeah, but we get there, and I literally love helping people find an easier way, and so I think that's what keeps me in speaking. I think sometimes people get into speaking, and that seems really great, but to stay in the long haul, you have to love it, and you have to be able to add value. You have to really recognize what people's needs are. What is the problem that they're trying to solve? And I think for a lot of speakers, that's the really hard messaging. Wouldn't you agree that that's kind of a big challenge for most?
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people in the business, they forget that it's a business.
Yeah.
Because there are some points that are exciting and it's fun to do things. But I still remember I sat down with a man in Australia, and he told me, because I was just beginning this journey, and he said, Bob, your dream is too small. And I looked at him and he go, what do you mean my dream's too small? I want to travel the world. I want to encourage people, And he said, yeah, but you're going to run into detours and you're going to run into challenges. And if your dream isn't big enough, you're going to stop.
Yeah.
And you're not going to push through, and you'll quit. Yeah. And I thought, I didn't realize at the time what he meant, but it was a gift, in terms of you got to think past some of that to be able to do it. Because as you know, it's not always fun.
Well, and I think, that's true, whether you're a speaker or not a speaker, isn't it? Yeah. What gets those people?
Well, it fits in all of our jobs.
Yeah, you get up on Monday morning and does Monday morning feel like, oh, it's Monday? Or do you go, giddy up, it's Monday.
Exactly.
It's showtime. And I just really, I always said I had my serious career. Yeah. And I just want to have that moment where I'm just excited. So, when that phone rings and they said, hey, are you available? I love that part of my business, but I really, really love giving the insights into how to navigate communication with more ease and flow. And I think that that's the gift sometimes. And speaking just happens to be one of the vehicles. Yeah. Same as consulting.
And that makes sense, because you get a real sense that you're bringing value to the table.
Yeah.
When you see people get it, or afterwards you hear from them where you've made an impact, like months later, you get an email or a note from somebody saying, you said this and it literally changed my life. I mean, you don't get that often, but once in a while you get it where it really connected for somebody and they're now following a different path, or they went through something And because you gave them some tools, they surmounted the challenge,
Right.
which I find amazing.
Yeah, I love that part.
So let me ask you another question. Now, I happen to know from firsthand experience that you're brilliant when you're in front of an audience. And don't say you're not, because I have seen you in many situations here in Canada. I saw you when you opened the program in Cape Town, South Africa, when we were both speaking there, and you were exactly that. You were brilliant. So let me just ask you a question. Other than being brilliant and engaging and funny and those kind of things, what do your clients get when they engage you?
I think that depends on what they're hiring me to do, but I think what they count on is that I'm going to help them solve a problem that they have.
Okay.
Whether that's from the stage in a keynote, giving high level ideas or engagement opportunities for their staff or their colleagues, if it's an association conference, for example, but that I really deliver pragmatic, real life, things, even the stories I tell, the individuals in the room, they can relate to it and they can go there. That's what I can do. And they can see themselves in it.
Yeah.
And then I don't make the challenge, or the skills are actually fairly simple skills to follow. And I try to keep things less complex.
Okay.
So I think that what I get told by clients is that I take the real complex and simplify it into actionable moves that allow people to not be overwhelmed by the sheer daunting idea of resolving a problem. I am, I was speaking to you earlier before we started, but I really am probably that ideal and unusual combination of crisis management, because I have had so much experience in it. I have a huge unconscious competency in the art of the pivot. So being able to really think on my feet quickly, respond and adapt with agility. And I really pride myself on being able to show others how to do that, and then basically hold their hands and teach them the first few moves. So that
would be valuable to a company or to an association to teach their people how to do that before they need to know how to do that.
Yeah. So I often think, I was asked once, so are you a preventative maintenance girl? and I probably can be, but I'm not sure that my clients would say that their biggest value comes in preventative medicine. I think, like everyone else, us included, that, if I'm not busy, or I'm not as busy as I could be, I'm as likely to walk the dog and go for a snowshoe as I am to dig in deep and do some work that's a stretch goal or a challenge. And I think in organizations, that's the rub all the time, is finding that energy to stay engaged and active. And sometimes there are things in our organizations that disrupt the normal flow, unexpected events that create a crisis.
Yeah.
And so where a lot of my clients say, oh man, they walked away with the greatest value, is when I help them solve a problem they are having, as opposed to when they think they might have.
Okay.
And so, I think that there's some real value. Plus, I love that piece, that you're going to actually listen to me because you felt the discomfort that's coming from having to cope with this disruptive event that is occurring in front of you. And so whether that's the communication that's going out, or it's the communication that's coming inside to your teams, or delivering to the leaders a different way of connecting, or it's the new business owner who wants to deliver a boutique service. I'm really pretty sharp and pretty quick in those worlds of service delivery. I probably don't have the background as some other people do, and you certainly did with the brick and some other places. I'm not as good when you're selling a product, but if you're the product, you and we can talk.
Yeah.
Because I get that, so it's an interesting place to have somebody who has so much grassroots type of experience that has created an unconscious competency in the content delivery. So when somebody asks me a question, I don't typically say, I don't know. I typically could share a story or an example or a case study.
Let me share with you an example where I ran into that situation.
Where I've
Perhaps there's
seen
something in there that will help you.
Exactly. And so I think that being relatable is certainly helpful. I think being magnetic or charismatic, you pick your term. I think that no doubt helps because let's face it, a lot of people are bored.
Yeah, well, they are. And that's the whole point. I remember somebody told me in this business, one of the cardinal sins is never be boring.
Right?
You know, I had that when I was in school. And I told people I used to have teachers that were, you know, that were just boring. They sucked. It was like a black hole.
Right.
When I finally got into this business, I thought, I never want to do that.
I want to excite people.
I want people to be excited. They getting excited, get them upset, get them doing something.
Something. Any emotion will do except boredom.
Yeah, exactly. I tell people sometimes that in some way I'm a catalyst, because if there's a catalytic effect, something happens.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh yeah, no big deal. There's something happens.
So in my world of conflict and crisis management, my motto is bored people cause trouble.
Oh, that's right.
So, you know, if
they're bored, they start.
Yeah, they get disruptive.
Idle hands are the devil's something or other. I can't remember.
Yeah, exactly.
There's that thing. Yeah. Well, let me ask you another question. You've been doing this for quite a few years now. So based on, and you've worked with a lot of different kinds of groups and whatever, is there a group or a company that's kind of like what they call the ideal client type of thing that you really like to work with more than others?
Yeah, I mean, I love service industries.
Okay.
So, you know, I'm a people person. I help you manage or lead or inspire or create high performing teams, that whole people aspect, people serving people.
Okay.
I love that. So I have worked with banks, which I love. I've worked with financial planners. I've recently been working with golf courses in really? Producing high performing teams. I love, which is unusual, and I know it's going to sound weird, but I literally love municipal government and provincial government. These are the people, they're just not well supported typically.
No.
And there's such a wide chasm of talent out there that can support them in a way from a place of knowledge, of really understanding the processes and the intricacies and even the bureaucracies, if you will, that plague public service. And so I have worked in it. I've worked behind the curtain of it. I understand the roles and the responsibilities probably better than most. And so it's a really nice sweet spot for me, because when I come in and they start talking to me, my stories relate. I've had those experiences. I understand the elected officials and how that governance piece works. And so when I work with an elected official team, and really, so they've just been elected and they've got to figure out how to be a high functioning team, so you're not seeing all the conflict on the news. Those are things that I have an unconscious competency around. And so I both love them and I'm really good with them. And it's a rare combination. I know I've had a lot of meeting planners over the years say to me and bring me in for an all staff meeting, for example, to do a retreat day. And they'll say, geez, you know, I don't know if everyone will relate to your stories or if they'll all get you. And you know, because we have a lot of men and, you know, you're a girl. Yeah. Thanks for pointing out the obvious. And yeah, I seem to really resonate well with both. And I think it's because I spent so much time in those fields where I not only worked in healthcare and as a part-time medic and even doing some recording secretary work in my early years at council meetings, to, you know, the law enforcement piece, which is predominantly male driven, and to be able to connect the dots so that when I speak, people really feel that level of connection, that rapport. And I think they really appreciate that I care for them.
Yeah.
I know what limitations and obstacles are in their way. I have a really good sense of it.
Yeah.
And so I think from that angle, that's probably a really great sweet spot for me, mostly because we just get each other. You walk into a room and you go, these are my people.
Well, and the thing is, you're drawing from real life experience. So it's not theory.
Yeah.
It's lessons based on doing. And that always builds a better relationship with clients or audiences, because they want to know that you've been there, that you understand them.
And I think that's why we're so good with people who are business startups.
Yeah.
Right. You think how many of us work with people who want to get into the speaking industry. They want to get better at things. Well, we've been there.
Yeah.
And so when you see them, you feel for them, and you can really recognize yourself and your own journey in that. And I say the same is true in government, right? So I have these two really crazy, interesting dichotomies in my business, because it's all the things that I've worked my way through, and having done some leadership roles, I recognize the challenges and the frustrations and the anxiety. But so it's fun. It's fun.
You were talking earlier about stories, and that was actually one of the questions that I had on my list, is if there were any particular success stories that you'd want to share with somebody as an example of what they can do when they bring you in.
Yeah. So I would say that we obviously freedom of information and privacy, but to just do a general overview, I have been working with a particular municipality for quite some time. And I started by doing a team retreat, a staff retreat. And the staff felt so connected and like I really understood them. That when they ran into an issue between a manager, a team leader, a supervisor, and one of the frontline staff, they brought me in to help patch that relationship.
Oh, okay.
And do some coaching both with the leader and with the frontline staff provider, to really understand how they were both contributing, some kind of reality-based leadership training.
Okay.
And then that led to doing some more team training around what was identified in the disconnect or the unexpected events that were happening in the team, which then led to me doing 2 or 3 more departments and kind of working them through the whole process so they wouldn't have those same kind of high level unexpected events occurring that were disrupting the course of business. And then they helped me, they were having a CAO transition. So by now I've built this relationship. So they had a CAO transition and I helped with that CAO transition so that things wouldn't get missed and the person who was coming from the inside and becoming the CAO would feel supported, but so would the leadership team. And then I was still able to go in and help with some of the emergency services, the fire department. When they ran into a big event that disrupted the course of business, I was able to come in. And because I already had a relationship with everybody, I was able to come in really quickly and diffuse the crisis fast and get everybody back on track really quickly. And then I've had some people within that organization continue to hire me in different capacities with their families and with themselves to try and manage out the balance points between what I deliver from the stage and how they implement those tactics in their day-to-day. And so I think what the value of working with me is that you have this diversity of ability and robust talent that gives you this trusted advisor, this support person, in this mentor in the background that can really give you strategy and tactics, but also a good deal of support and connectedness and the communication that you might actually need. Because sometimes, as you know, it isn't just that we know the tools, but sometimes when we're in high levels of stress or pressure, we lose the words.
Yeah.
And so helping them rehearse and orchestrate and plan for that has been really, really useful. And I found that those organizations where I come in and I add that level, I'm able then to work with the elected officials when they run into the same roadblocks. And you get this really nice individual, this consultant who has the whole breadth of the organization in mind, and they're able to step in, whether it's frontline, middle management, directors, CAO, or elected officials. And then you have this really nice synergy in the messaging that you're attempting to move forward. So like you would with a small business, where you basically make everyone a great brand ambassador. So I think that in government, I take that idea of brand ambassadorship and then teach them how they're being perceived, and then how to shift that when they need to be perceived differently in a way that's more meaningful and adds value and creates more civility in the workplace.
Fantastic. So I want to thank you for taking time to talk to us, and I want to invite your viewers to visit Alberta Speakers and chat with you about how you can help them with their teams, programs, and events. I'm going to say thank you and ask you if there's any last thing you'd like to share.
Yeah, hire me. Hey, if you've heard me speak, tell people about me. We are our own worst enemies, aren't we, Bob? That we tend to kind of sit back and hope somebody will say good things about us. So thank you for saying good things about me. I appreciate it. I love the keynoting. It's a great.
I tell it the way I see it.
You're the best.
Hire my brilliant friend Faith.
You too, my friend.
She will bring some amazing energy and expertise to your event.
And right back at you, Bob. Right back at you.
Thank you, everyone.